and welcome to the comprehensive news analysis of the Indian Express Delhi edition dated 12th June 2020. So let's look at the first article. The first article says Supreme Court says quota not fundamental right rejects plea. So the Supreme Court is talking with reference to the OBC quota, the other backward classes quota in NEET reservation in the state of Tamil Nadu. Now this article is relevant for General Studies Paper 2 Indian Polity. So, in the backdrop of this article, I would like to elaborate the reservation system in India. We are all familiar that our constitution guarantees reservation to certain minorities and certain other backward classes and socially and educationally backward classes or OBCs of India, and also to scheduled caste and scheduled tribes as well. And from 2019 onwards, we have the reservation for economically weaker section under unreserved section as well. So let's discuss about the relevant articles. Through enshrined in articles 15 and 16 of the Indian Constitution, it allows the Indian government to set quotas to ensure any socially and educationally backward classes of citizens to properly represented in public life, so they get proper representation. It is intended to realize the promise of equality enshrined in the Constitution of India. Now, we all are familiar that reservation is primarily given to three groups: scheduled tribes, scheduled caste, and other backward classes, abbreviated as SC, ST, and OBC. Now, there are groups that have faced social and economic discrimination in the past, and also they are facing discrimination in the present, and were underrepresented in public life. Originally, reservation was only given to SCs and STs, but was later extended to OBCs in 1987 after the implementation of the Mandal Commission report. So you know about the income caps of the economically weaker sections. It is 8 lakh annual income, and also OBCs. We have the creamy layer as well as non-creamy layer also. So what kind of reservation is guaranteed in employment? What happens? That a fixed percentage of India's government and public sector jobs are not exclusive for categories of people largely based on their caste or tribe. The 1993 Supreme Court ruling in Indira Sawhney case said that reservations in job promotions are unconstitutional and not in accordance with the political constitution, but allowed its continuation for 5 years. In 1995, the 77th Amendment to the Constitution was made to amend Article 16 before the 5-year period expired to continue with reservations for SCs, STs in promotions. Now, in this article, the Supreme Court is talking about the reservation in educational institutions, especially in the medical colleges and the dental colleges, with respect to Tamil Nadu NEET reservation, National Eligibility Cum Entrance Test. We all know that some kinds of reservations are always guaranteed to the socially and educationally backward classes, but it should not be 50%. And the Supreme Court is taking note of the fact that right to reservation is not a fundamental right. It is really, the Supreme Court is correct in its approach. Right to reservation is not a fundamental right. Nobody can and guarantee and appeal to the Supreme Court that my right to reservation is my fundamental right. No, right to reservation not a fundamental right. You all know the fundamental rights in India. And with respect to the basic structure of the Constitution, we all know the validity of the amendments with respect to 81st Amendment, 82nd Amendment. We all know that the 81st Amendment was made to the Constitution to permit the government to treat the backlog of reserved vacancies as a separate and distinct group to which the ceiling of 50% did not apply. Okay. So in 2007, what happened? The government of Uttar Pradesh introduced reservation in job promotions. However, citing the Supreme Court decision, the Allahabad High Court in 2011 ruled this policy unconstitutional. And in education, scholarships or student aid is available for other backward classes, Muslim minorities, women's as well. But only 0.7% of the 7% of the scholarships or student aid is based on merit. The more kinds of student aid is grossly inadequate representation of the categories. Okay. Now, new rules implementation of the UPA government did not provide scholarship scheme and reservation quota of the students and employees of colleges under Central University and State University approved by the University Grants Commission. Next, we are moving on to the next article. Drawing the line, this is an editorial from the Indian Express Delhi edition written by Mr. Shyam Saran, international relations expert and strategic analyst. So this is relevant for General Studies Paper 2 International Relations under the category of Indo-Nepal relations. So in the backdrop of this article, we are familiar with the Indo-Nepal relations, and earlier also we have discussed about the Indo-Nepal relations. But this article is making reference particularly to the 2020 the border dispute. Let's see the border dispute between India and Nepal. What kind of border dispute is going on? So you must be familiar with the border disputes in 2020 between India and Nepal, When we say about India-Nepal border disputes, the territorial disputes of India and Nepal include the Kala Pani, 400 km square at India-Nepal, China, Tri Junction in western Nepal, and Susta, 140 km square in southern Nepal. Now, Nepal claims that the river to the west of Kala Pani is the main Kali river, hence the area should belong to Nepal. But India claims that the river to the west of Kala Pani is not the main Kali river, and therefore the border there should be based on the ridge lines of the mountains, Om Parvat, to the east of the river. The river borders the Nepalese province of Sudur Paschim and the Indian state of Uttarakhand. The Sugauli Treaty signed by Nepal and British India on March 4, 1816. We can just say 1816. What happened? Locates the Kali River as Nepal's western boundary with India. Subsequent maps drawn by British surveyors show the source of the boundary river at different places. This discrepancy in locating the source of the river led to boundary disputes between India and Nepal. Now, what happened especially to the 2020 boundary disputes? We must be familiar with the 2020 skirmishes between India and Nepal, and also we have many kinds of territorial disputes as well. Territorial disputes of India and Nepal are limited to Limpiadura, Lipu Lake Pass, Kala Pani also. Nepal claims that the river to the west of Kala Pani as the main Kali river, hence it belongs to Nepal. The river borders the Nepalese district of Darchula in the Sudur Paschim, as I discussed now, province of the Indian district of Pittorgarh in Uttarakhand state. Now, again, we are making the reference to Treaty of Sugauli signed by Nepal and British India on 3rd of March 1816. So locates the Kali River as Nepal's western boundary. Although also a week ago, Nepal released its new map, okay, which is showing the Indian claimed area as its own area. Also, in November 2019, there was a protest in Kathmandu opposing a new map of India showing Kala Pani as part of Indian state of Uttarakhand. On 20 May 2020, Nepal launched its own map showing Kala Pani as parts of its own territory. The Treaty of Sugauli of 1816 AD between the two sides in order to stop the Nepal-British wars at the east-west boundary dispute of Nepal. In some places, boundary disputes appear when the provision of this treaty formed about 200 years ago, and it was not transformed, it was not clearly withdrawn. So, not based on the political map or the survey of India, we must be familiar with the Susta. Susta territory is an area under territorial dispute currently in Tribhuvan Usta, Lumbini zone, Nepal. Lumbini, it is Nepal, birthplace of Gautam Buddha. So the article is making reference to setting the limits, drawing the line. Coming to the next article, we have a reference to the Jammu and Kashmir new media policy. You all are familiar. 2 days ago, Jammu and Kashmir released its new media policy. General Studies Paper 2, Indian Polity. This article is relevant for that section. So coming to Jammu and Kashmir new media policy, we can discuss it. So what the opposition is guaranteeing, what kinds of provisions we can see in the new media policy of the Jammu and Kashmir. When we say about the new media policy for Uttarakhand as well, we have Union Territory, because Jammu and Kashmir on 5th August 2019 it was divided into two union territories, Ladakh and Jammu and Kashmir. Not on officially it was divided on 31st of October it was implemented, but on the 5th of August 2019 Article 370 was abrogated and Article 35 was also revoked. So under this new policy, what is going to happen? A background check, please look at this here. A background check of the newspaper publishers, editors and key staff is going to take place. Okay, a background check of the editors and key staff and publishers is going to take place. It has been made mandatory before impaneling them for government advertisements, apart from security clearance before a journalist is given accreditation. Now, the new media policy for Jammu and Kashmir announced by the Jammu and Kashmir administration, it was announced on the 2nd of June 2020, not 2 days ago, sorry for the inconvenience. So it gives powers to decide what is fake and what is unethical, or what constitutes anti-national news. Now, you must the Jammu and Kashmir administration is ready to take legal action. It is written here clearly: the Jammu and Kashmir administration ideas of democratic governance are very different from what the Constitution of India promises. Though the government talks of bringing equality to the people of the former state, its heavy-handed approach has ensured that the people of Jammu and Kashmir have not yet been the opportunity to voice their opinion on the August 5, 2019 decision to strip the erstwhile state of its special status under Article 370. Jammu and Kashmir has significant law and order and security considerations. It has been fighting a proxy war supported and aided from across the border. The 50-page policy mentions this. A document that mostly deals with government advertisements to news organizations. Now, what happens in such a situation? Under this new media policy of Jammu and Kashmir, a background check of newspaper publishers, editors and key staff members has been made mandatory before impaneling them for government advertisements, apart from security clearance before journalist is given accreditation. This is all about the reference to the Jammu and Kashmir new media policy which is relevant for general studies, paper 2, Indian polity. Now, very important, National Institutes of Ranking Framework. National Institutional Ranking Framework. Yesterday at 1 p.m., the HRD Minister, Mr. Ramesh Pokhriyal Nishank, released the ranking of India, universities of India, colleges of India, higher educational institutions of India in particular, under 10 categories. Earlier it was up to 2019, it was released in 2009 categories, but from this year, dental category has also been added. So what are the categories? First, overall category, then university category, then we have a colleges category, then medical category, then engineering category, then management, then law and dental. So relevant for general studies, paper on education, national institutions ranking framework. So if you look at the overall rankings, first comes IIT Madras, second comes Indian Institute of Science Bengaluru, Karnataka, third IIT Delhi. Coming to university category, first we have Indian Institute of Science Bengaluru, second we have Jawaharlal Nehru University New Delhi, third we have Banaras Hindu University Varanasi. Coming to medical category, we have the first All India Institute of Medical Sciences, that is AIMS New Delhi. Second we have PGIMER Chandigarh, and CMC Vellore, Christian Medical College Vellore. Similarly, we have the first top 3 categories for all the top 3 colleges or educational institutions for the remaining categories as well. But I would like to elaborate about the National Institutional Ranking Framework, because we know about the NIRF was started from 2016, and from the last 5 years, 2016, 17, 18, 19, 20, it has released consistently, and also it has increased competition, healthy competition within all the higher educational institutions of India. Also, it has granted some kind of privilege to the private institutions as well, because they're craving for ranking, and there's also much official, much acceptable. Because before 2016, there was no kind of official rankings released by our own government, our own Ministry of Human Resource and Development. So what is National Institute of Ranking Framework? NIRF was implemented in 2016, and it is a methodology adopted by, but we must know the 5 methods also. I'll discuss now. So it is a methodology adopted by the Ministry of Human Resource Development, Government of India, to rank institutions of higher education in India. The framework was approved by the MHRD and launched by Minister of Human Resource Development on 29 September 2015. There are separate rankings for different types of institutions like medical, law, management and all, on their areas of operation like universities and colleges, engineering institutions, management, pharmacy, architecture. The framework uses several parameters for ranking purposes. So what are the parameters? Research and stakeholder perception. Now, these parameters have been grouped into 5 clusters, and these clusters were assigned to certain weightages. So weightages depend on the type of institution. About 3,500 institutions voluntarily participate in the first round of rankings. So the 2017 rank list were released by MHRD on 3 April 2017, while its first rankings released in 2016. NIRF had only 4 categories: universities, engineering, management and pharmacy. There is no medical category. So in 2017, 2 more categories, overall and college, were added. Around 3,000 institutions participated in that rankings, and also in 2018, NIRF rankings were released, which witnessed an increase in the number of participation of the institutions. On coming to 2019, we have the 9 categories: overall, universities, engineering, colleges, management, pharmacy, medical, architecture and law. And from 2020, we have dental as well. So the formation of the NIRF continues. So how the NIRF was formed? MHRD organized a one-day workshop on 21 August 2014 on evolving methodologies for ranking of institutions of higher education in India. So what are the 5 categories on which we have the markings done? You must know the 5 categories. The parameters are very important, and first is engineering, management, pharmacy and architecture institutions. Parameters for all the categories includes first TLR, teaching, learning and resources. Second, RPC, research, professional practice and collaborative performance. Then GO, graduation outcomes. Then OI, outreach and inclusivity and perception. Here, please note, perception is a subjective term, so it cannot be granted. So only 10% of the institutions are evaluated on the basis of perception, so that no kind of ambiguity takes place, no kind of favorably takes place in terms of institutions which are old and have large size, so they are kept size independent and age independent. Among the universities, we have the improvements made by Amrita Vishwa Vidyapeetham, which is a private university, BITS Pilani, Birla Institute of Technology and Sciences in Rajasthan, Aligarh Muslim University. How the changed slots, just you can what kind of benefits will get? Benefits that the ranking ensures good recognition of all the colleges. They can improve themselves. Ranking gives the position, so gives them recognition. Also, the private institutions are much benefited by the ranking given by the National Institutions Ranking Framework. The approved set of parameter groups and the weightages assigned to them in respect of the overall rating, and for colleges given in the following table. But must we note, there is certain criticism as well, because although it takes into parameters of many factors like size, TLC, RPR, graduation outcome and inclusivity, perception also. But what is criticism on? The list was criticized for being incomplete, incoherent, and bordering on the random. Indian Institute of Technology. Okay, uh, so it is maybe some ITs raised objection on NRI of ranking, accusing of being based on incomplete data. Data not talking about it is not much valid, but it is highly acceptable. Yes, yes. We can just discuss about from the universities and improvements in the same way. Then we have Indo-Russia relations. We have general studies paper 2 international relations. How it is valid because today is 12th June 2020 and on 2001 12th June the treaty Indo-Russia treaty was drawn. So in the backdrop of this the Indo-Russia relations comes into play. So Indo-Russia relations are much coherent, much good. Are bilateral relations between India and Russia. During the Cold War, India and the USSR, Soviet Union Socialist Republic, Soviet Union, Union of Socialist Republic, had a strong strategic military, economic, and diplomatic relationship. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union, Russia inherited its close relationship with India, which resulted in both nations sharing a special relationship. India and Russia both terms the strategic relationship as a special and privileged strategic partnership, owing to the bonhomies shared by the country's respective leaders, Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Vladimir Putin. The bilateral relationship has seen further growth and development. An informal meeting between them in 2018 at Sochi helped accelerate the partnership, displaying the role of interaction and cooperation between India and Russia. Traditionally, the Indo-Russian strategic partnership, if we talk about the Indo-Russian strategic partnership, it has been built on five major components: politics, defense, civil nuclear energy, anti-terrorism cooperation, and space. The five major components were highlighted in a speech given by former Indian Foreign Secretary Mr. Ranjan Mathai in Russia. In last 6 years, we have seen a sixth economic component has been grown: bilateral trade. The target up to 2025 to reach the target of US dollar 30 billion trade. India-Russia Intergovernmental Commission we are also having. Then, according to 2014 BBC World Service poll, 85% of the Russians view India positively. Discussing about the nuclear deals, we have on 7th of November 2009, India signed a new nuclear deal with Russia apart from the deals that were agreed upon by two countries earlier. So here we have making a reference to BrahMos, India-Russia military partnership. Just you have to read this article carefully. And a strategic partnership was drawn. In the same way, we have Indo-Russia relations dealing with COVID-19, how they can cooperate together. One times of difficult times, desperate times. But 2 units of the Kudankulam nuclear power plant were already operational. So what kind of Soviet Union treaty of friendship and cooperation is drawn? We can just say the foreign relations of Russia as well. The foreign relations of Russian Federation as a policy of the government of Russia by which it guides the interactions with other nations, their citizens and foreign organizations. This very importantly discussing about the Indo-Russia relations. Next article, we are moving on to the general studies paper to international relations about not just in Ladakh, India, China moved troops in all three sectors last month. This article is the continuation of a series of the Indo-China 2020 border skirmishes. The same way we have been discussing earlier from the past 2 days or okay. So 2020 India-China border disputes, very important to discuss. So what are the skirmishes? We must discuss about the skirmishes. The 2020 India-China skirmishes represent an ongoing military standoff between China and India since May 5, 2020, which is ongoing. Indo-China border dispute. The growing power imbalance between the two countries is also a stated reason for Chinese assertiveness increasing with everything else such as location of the dispute or the international ties of India being mere details. So, very important we have said the army sources claim that the troop movement not similar to the deployment in eastern Ladakh, they were making a reference to the disengagement process, coming to the face-off as well. There are sources, the troops, what happened to the corps of commander Mr. General Harinder Singh. So we can just draw a background. The border between China and India is disputed at the 20 different locations. Since 1980s, there had been over 20 rounds of talks between the two countries related to these border issues, and ORF study points out that only 2% of border incidents between 2010 and 2010 to 2014 received any form of media coverage. There is no publicly available map depicting India's version of the line of actual control. The official boundary for India is seen as a survey of India maps. Now for China, the line of actual control is mostly the claim line in the Ladakh region. But in the northeast of India, China claims Arunachal Pradesh. A report by the diplomat Shyam Saran, of which we have the article today. Just make a reference to the article by Mr. Shyam Saran. He's the greatest international expert and strategic analyst. So Mr. Shyam Saran was claimed to have revealed that India had lost 640 kilometers square due to area denial by Chinese patrolling. However, Saran had later declined the claims about any loss of territory or Chinese incursions. So how we can see, we can link the Indo-China disputes to the Indo-Nepal relations. Moving on to the next article. US report recently, US has released a report about religious freedom, and it includes the mention of India's protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act and the abrogation of Article 370 from the Jammu and Kashmir. So with reference to US report on religious freedom, I would like to talk about what are the references or reference points made by the US report. But India has rejected, please note, India has rejected, has not any kind of comment or not accepted at all, totally rejected this biased government report published by the US. But it allows us to think something about that why US religious freedom reports Citizenship Amendment Act, National Register of Citizens, and Jammu and Kashmir status as well. So we can see that the report was released by the US Secretary of State Michael R. Pompeo. We can just say Michael R. Pompeo. It details incidents of cow vigilantism and other types of mob violence, communal violence. That is true. India is taking place, but mentioning that and religious bias, it may create something. The US State Department has released its annual International Religious Freedom Report, a survey of the state of religious freedom across the world, which is submitted to the US Congress. The report for India, which looks back on the developments in 2019, takes note of the change in the status of the Jammu and Kashmir, the CA and RC, all mob lynchings. It takes into account anti-conversionist laws as well, some cow vigilance, communal violence as well. Issues of religious inspired mob violence, lynching, and communal violence were sometimes denied or ignored by the lawmakers, according to the NGOs and media outlets. The report says some officials of Hindu majority parties, including from the Bharatiya Janata Party, had inflammatory public remarks for social media posts against minority communities. It details incidents of cow vigilance about Tabariz Ansari as well, the mob lynching as well, the Babari Masjid decision as well. The report also takes note of the Babari Masjid decision of the Supreme Court and challenges to the 2018 reversal of the ban on someone entering the Sabarimala temple. So it's kind of interference. It outlines the US engagement with India on the issues. The US Commission on International Religious Freedom, USI CIRF, an independent bipartisan commission and separate from the State Department's Office of International Religious Freedom, had in April recommended to Secretary of State Michael Pompeo that the State Department downgraded India's religious freedom to the lowest rate country of particular concern. The Secretary of State is not obliged to accept the recommendation and has not always done so. Very significantly, when we say about the US, the government on religious freedom, we note that India has rejected the US government's, you must know, in the same way. Very importantly, India has rejected the US government's vote on religious freedom, and we all are familiar with the kind of religious freedom granted India. And the Ministry of External Affairs has stated, the spokesman has stated, Mr. Anurag Srivastava, our principled position remains that we see no locus standi for a foreign entity to pronounce on the state of our citizens' constitutionally protected rights. The 2019 International Religious Freedom Report that documented major instances of violation of religious freedom across the world, it was released on Wednesday, today is Friday, 2 days ago. India's vibrant democratic traditions and practices are evident to the world. The people and government of India are proud of our country's democratic traditions. True. The Ministry of External Affairs Ministry, Mr. Anurag Srivastava, is true here. So moving on to the next article. Coimbatore, now Coimbatore, the renaming of cities, but it is not relevant because in this time of pandemic, we are already suffering and all. The government is thinking of changing names, not at all good, not at all justified. But yes, this article, maybe if the name is changed successfully, may be asked for a general studies paper 1 geography, not in mains but in prelims, may be asked one question. So in this way we have discussed all the articles with reference to the name changing of the Coimbatore to Coimbatore, Vellore to Vellore, and Ambala to Ambulu. Any kinds of name change may be incorporated. Just we can zoom it out and read it out about the name changing processes. We have the freedom religious protest against religious freedom, Citizenship Amendment Act and Article 370 abrogation. Coming to India-China border disputes, not just in Ladakh, India-China moved the troops in all three, all coming out from the Russia-Nations relations, Indo-Russia relations. Coming to general studies paper on education, national institution ranking framework. What are the criticism? What are the parameters that it takes into account? Importantly, what are the overall ranks by IIT Madras, IIC, and IIT Delhi. Coming to the New Media Policy Jammu and Kashmir, Indo-Nepal relations. Coming to GS paper 2, Indian polity. There are OBC granting reservation to the other backward classes. The Supreme Court is telling that quota, OBC quota, with reference to that the other backward class quota, it is not a fundamental right. It means reservation is not a fundamental right. The Supreme Court justifying. In this way, we have discussed all the articles, but we have one question here. Like, we have to find the connect with a recently launched government scheme. Just we have to look so how we can solve this puzzle. Like, first is a logo. We don't know what logo belongs to, but we can take it from the current affairs section that we have discussed earlier. But second is a logo of EICT, the All India Council of Technical Education, the body that regulates all the engineering institutions of India. And we have the smart situation of the government of India. You know about the smart cities mission. It was launched in 2016 to rank the cities for the developing cities, mission transformation, and fourth one is tulip flower. So with reference to tulip flower, it is coming out to be in my mind some scheme related to tulip, which was released a week ago. Tulip scheme, that stands for the Urban Learning Internship Program, and the AICT regulates that internship program, and in accordance with the smart city missions of the government and the urban local bodies it runs. So the answer is tulip scheme. Thank you for listening to today's analysis. Thank you for watching. Thank you.